Hello, everyone. This is Sparkle On with Davy Jags. Sparkle is your happiness, passion, and self-worth, and it's found through the power of creativity. Today, I am so excited to have a colleague of mine, Jenny Tinghui Zhang, who is here. She is the author of Superfan and Four Treasures of the Sky. Superfan is her newest novel. It's a coming-of-age story about a lonely college freshman here based in Austin, Texas, which is where we're recording today. And it's about this parasocial relationship that the character Minnie finds in a K-pop inspired band. I'm so excited to get into a conversation around fandom.
I'm standing and I'm shouting out. It started as a spark, but felt the flames growing strong.
And so I wanted to start with what sparked this novel idea and kind of this story of Minnie.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that we finally get to meet and talk in person, having known each other for about 5 years.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been that long because it was during COVID.
It was during COVID. It was during the very beginning of COVID, I think that summer. So it's really cool to see you
in person.
I know. So this book, I guess what sparked it is I fell down a rabbit hole of becoming obsessed with a K-pop boy band myself, BTS. You may have heard of them. In the last semester of my MFA program in Wyoming. And it was such a whirlwind experience where I saw a video of them performing on SNL. And 2 weeks later, I was in Chicago, had flown there by myself, had missed my MFA/English department's graduation celebration ceremony. They had to FaceTime me in from the Denver airport because I told them, I'm sorry, I can't go. I'm going to this BTS concert. And no one understood what that was or why I decided to shirk everything and just go seek out this boy band. I went to this concert, a stadium of 80,000 people. It was Soldier Field by myself, and then had the best time of my life, and then came back to Laramie, Wyoming, and graduated. But I think what sparked the book for me was that kind of huge rush of passion and almost impulsiveness that I felt in discovering this band. And then I think I was 27 at the time, a full adult, just kind of still being capable of having these super passionate, super intense feelings for something. And that was always really interesting to me. And I felt like I was almost looking at myself from the outside, and just seeing this happen to a person. So I think it was going through that experience, and also having been obsessed with many things in my life, that made me really want to explore, okay, what is it about the falling in love with something that you don't know really, but that you think you know, that is so prevalent among people. And this book came out of that.
I love this concept of falling down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I think as writers, it's kind of our job to fall down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Right? And, I don't know if every single person always understands what it means to have this kind of like compulsive, obsessive nature around something that we believe is love. My new favorite word is limerence.
Oh, yeah.
And I find it so fascinating, but in your creative process around this falling down the rabbit hole, has it always been music that you're drawn to, or a certain community that creates that obsessive feeling? Or has it been many different things that you can kind of point to and say it's helped shape your writing practice, or even some stories that you've produced over the years?
Yeah, it hasn't always been music, but I found that music is almost the easiest way to access that feeling.
I wonder why.
I do too. I was thinking about this, and about how I think so many of pop stars that we see today have the most intense fan bases in a way that other art forms don't really have. We don't really see that level of intensity with fans of actors or actresses, for example. Maybe some.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a certain Club Chalamet. Timothée Chalamet's fan.
Maybe not after his comment this week.
Right.
He might have just lost his Oscar.
Exactly. But there is something about music and performance in the musical realm that seems to bring out that level of passion. But for me, I think my first dalliance with obsession was probably in middle school when I just became so obsessed with Lord of the Rings. And I just lived and breathed it, both the movies and the books. In particular, I was so obsessed with Legolas / Orlando Bloom.
I remember so many people.
Yes.
The cardboard cutouts of Orlando Bloom. And then it's like you'd be sleeping over at friend's house and like Orlando Bloom would just be staring at you. Or even like Edward from Twilight. And I was like, guys, I love these things too, but like these cardboard cutouts are the next level.
So it's funny you say that because my group of friends and I all went in and bought a cardboard cutout of Legolas, and we all took turns housing him. So it became a sisterhood of the traveling pants situation with this cardboard cutout where we take turns like having him in our homes.
Are we bringing this back? Like, I feel like there's more of this fandom around certain books that's happening. Like, I feel like we're gonna have cardboard cutouts again. Like,
I'm happy for it. I would love that. But yeah, like with Lord of the Rings, and I've been talking about this a lot with my friends, and they're like, yes, Jenny, you absolutely did these things. But for example, like I would go to school dressed up as Legolas, and I had made a little bow out of like a stick and yarn that I brought to school, which I don't know how they allowed me to say that it's a bow considered a weapon and bring this in. For my 7th grade, I was in GT, the Gifted and Talented program.
Yeah.
And we had to do a project at the end of the year. And my project was I made a website all about Lord of the Rings.
That's really cool.
I learned how to I learned HTML, very basic HTML. I like put together this website. I had information about all of the actors, the characters. Like it was a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
That kind of spawned from just obsession. And of course, I wrote fan fiction, as every obsessed teenager might. But that probably was the first instance in my life where I really dove headfirst into something, and out of it came all of these various expressions of that obsession.
And while you were writing this novel, but also trying to understand your young self around your obsessions and your fandom, what were maybe some conclusions that you came to, or maybe not conclusions, but realizations about how young women latch on to these fandom communities, or even like boy bands or movies and stuff like that? Like, what was the underlying reason or expression that they were trying to come out of this experience? Because I know, like, I've had it too. Like, we're seeing the resurgence. Like, Hilary Duff was like, Britney Spears was my obsession. It was always, like, for me, I felt like it was these older women pop stars, because I was, like, young at the time, that I think I wanted to be them, but I didn't know how. And so, like, feeling their music and like dancing to their music was like as close as I could get. But that was just my experience.
Yeah, I would say you and I probably have and had similar experiences. Because what I realized when I was really investigating, okay, why am I so obsessed with BTS? What is it about them? Because I think they're all younger than me, and but still I was so drawn to them. And I think for me personally, it was seeing in them something I really wanted for myself.
Yeah.
For them specifically, it's when you watch them interacting, they feel really like a family, more than just friends, like truly caring for each other. They've grown up with each other, and I'm an only child, and I've always craved that closeness and that camaraderie and intimacy. So there was something about seeing someone have, or at least portray, this thing that you really desire for yourself that really drew me into wanting to just be surrounded by them all the time. And that was something that I kind of imbued the character Minnie with in the book, is that she's very lonely. She wants to make friends, but it's hard for her. She doesn't quite know why, but in college, it's supposed to be this time of you're blooming, you're becoming the person you're supposed to be. But for her, she just can't quite unlock what that equation looks like for her. And she sees these boys, this boy band called Hourglass, and she sees them, as she says, doing all of these hard things, like putting themselves out there, performing, going on radio shows and getting terrible questions asked of them by the host. And it kind of acts like an elixir for her of maybe because they can do these things, I can find it within myself to do hard things too. That is something that I still feel in myself when I'm feeling like I'm falling into obsession with something, is there's always something in the thing that I'm falling in love with that I want to kind of take for myself and use to make myself better in some way. And I don't know if that's something you experienced as well.
Like this whole like dialogue that you just like made me realize so much. And I'm well, because I've been researching, like I said, I've been researching about my new favorite word, limerence, and why it's not love. And it's not the same comparison as lust versus love. It's not the same, and it's not really studied in psychology to a full depth. But what is interesting with the studies that have been done, it is limerence creates a stuckness, whereas lust is still momentum of whether it's exploring sexuality or things like that. But limerence is more of how you described it, that elixir, but still not being able to unlock something about oneself. And it rarely actually ever has anything to do with the limerent object, whether that's a person or kind of the context that we're talking in, fandom. And I know that I go through similar, not just with maybe like particularly men of my past, but as well with, I guess they're not boy bands, these are man bands, because I'm thinking of my obsession with the Counting Crows. But it started because of a fling I had with a guy in Paris. And we were staying up all night and we were watching the Counting Crows, and I just was hooked on this performance. I still, to this day, if I am stuck, I will move into more stuckness by watching this performance back from 2013. Adam Duritz performing around here. And I know it's because I'm trying to discover something about that performance. And it's always ironically, and kind of with the inspiration behind your novel, ironically, it's usually for me an obsession around something that's related to men, whether it's a man himself or the musical background. And I it's like I said, I was always obsessed with different girl pop stars, and I still am, but from almost like a role model power imbalance. And so I wanted to kind of dive into what you have said in some of your other interviews, how fandom holds such power. I think you tapped on it a little bit, but can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Oh my gosh, in what sense? Because it holds power, I think, in good ways and in bad ways.
I think we should go into both. Like, I know what it's like to be at a concert and even be by myself and feel like I'm having the best time of my life. But then, for example, let's take Taylor Swift, and you see the fury that evokes in even people that aren't her fans about her, but especially her fans who, I mean, it affects their weeks if they don't like an album, or if she isn't performing to the standards of them, or having all the clues that they expect of her. And I think that's so interesting because of it is still a power imbalance.
Right.
And what are we trying to actually say? Do we not have the platform that she has? And so I think there's good and bad in both of it. And that's kind of where I'm going with the idea of power.
Yes. So Yeah, on the one hand, yes. I think in this book, at least, I was trying to explore both the good and the bad sides of fandom because I think, currently when we talk about fandom, so much of that conversation is about the crazier aspects of fandom. But as I have experienced it, and as so many other people have experienced it, there's also these really beautiful parts of fandom where you're making friends, you are finding community, you are exploring and expressing your creativity. So I have a lot of great feelings toward fandom. On the other hand, I cannot deny that it also has been sort of a breeding ground for some of these more unsavory behaviors, such as conspiracy and these kind of like extreme reactions to the people that we're fans of. So I think it was This American Life where it was about a guy who had put himself up as stock, I think, or he had made himself available to be a stock, and people could become shareholders of him, like as a human. And as a result, they could kind of vote and decide on every single decision that he made in his life because ultimately they were investing money into the success of who he would become. So it got to a point where, they would decide if he met someone, if he would pursue them romantically, ultimately seeing like if this person was going to lead to more success for him to fulfill his human potential. They would decide like if he was going to drink coffee or tea in the morning, stuff like that, right? And I've always kind of thought of that as a perfect embodiment or representation of what fandom becomes when it reaches this level that you're talking about of this person that I don't know and who doesn't know me, but that I am a fan of owes owes to me the way they're behaving, the choices they're making in their lives. I am owed all of these things because I am their fan. I am, in a way, their shareholder. And it's true, right? Like when we're fans of people, usually we're buying the stuff that they're putting out. We are their advocates in the world. And so I think it's almost natural to come away with some sense of power that their behavior affects you and you expect them to do certain things that reflect well for you. Yeah, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, and I think, well, we're seeing it, especially what you said about the stockholder stuff. We're seeing it right now in the athletic world,
Yeah.
especially with some of these platforms that are creating, fan engagement, participation um, around athletes, and it's very tied to the creator economy and monetization efforts, which I completely understand, especially because an athlete has such a short window to claim that identity. But as you were talking, and I was understanding, this artist, athlete artist, in my mind, I've been both. I mean, I am both. They are the
Yeah.
same thing. And one of the things when I hear kind of this duality of creating, but then also creating to scale and make a business and for the masses, there's so much confliction because one of the things that I know to be true is autonomy and intuition are vital to the success of being an artist or an athlete. And this is where I think it gets tricky because when someone blows up so much as an athlete or an artist, it's are you losing that core spark, if you will?
Right.
Um, and that actually leads me to your journey with not only writing this novel, but even a stuckness that maybe you faced, where you thought that you fell out of love with writing, which
Yeah.
I can only empathize how scary that could be. It happened after your first novel, Four Treasures of the Sky, and I I can only imagine the roller coaster of publicity and the debut and kinda just, like, maybe needing a break, but did you know that you maybe just needed a break, or did you really truly believe that you lost this identity?
It was a little bit of both because you're right. It is so scary to having spent all of my life loving writing and it being how I identify myself. First and foremost, if people were to ask me, like, who are you? I would say, I'm a writer. That's what I do. That's what I love to do. So to suddenly, or at least suddenly it felt to me, it was probably a gradual thing, to suddenly wake up one day and look at writing and the act of writing with almost disgust. Disgust for myself was really, really scary. At the same time, I also knew that this could not be a forever feeling because I didn't want it to be. I didn't want to have the rest of my life be defined by that feeling. So yeah, ultimately what happened was, the book, my first novel, For Treasures of the Sky, came out. And as a debut author, it is just a really wild experience. And I think this would be the case for any artist who spends all of their time, energy, heart, soul, day in and day out with this thing. You are living with this thing. I would be asleep and dreaming about this thing. You're just constantly holding it with you. And then suddenly to see it go out into the world and for other people to be talking about this thing and experiencing this thing and you not having control over it anymore, you no longer sort of being able to protect it. And as in a way, it feels like you're no longer able to protect yourself. It's a really jarring experience. And on top of that, you are, as you mentioned, all the publicity, the promo, the kind of just having to be out there and be the face of the book as well. Writers don't write because we want to do those things. We write because we are incapable of doing anything except for being alone and expressing ourselves to the page.
Right.
That's what we thrive in. That's what we're good at. We never get into writing thinking, oh yes, one day I will be speaking about this. No, you want the book.
But you are.
I know, I'm literally doing it
right now.
But you want the book and the books to speak for themselves.
Yes.
So all of that created this sort of experience for me where once the book was out and once all of the noise died down, I felt like the world was so silent and I had nothing left. I was operating here for so many months and all of a sudden I was here and it was quiet and the world moved on, but I was still with this book and I was still thinking about this book, but it was no longer my book, So that's what led me to this state of I'm trying to work on the next project on Superfan, but I'm just finding it so emotionally difficult to connect with the act of writing again and believing that this is what I'm meant to do. So that's kind of where and how I got to where we're talking about.
And I know you actually wrote an essay about how male figure skating was a pivot to finding that love again. I think that's so interesting, and it kind of goes back to what you said, these obsessions that you've had over the years. And I do believe this is where a lot of magic lives for writers, but creatives, or honestly anyone who's feeling an inflection point of their life. Was it just the figure skating that brought you back, or was it a combination of a couple things that you could really point to? I do want to dive into this essay because, guys, if you haven't read this essay, it's freaking phenomenal.
It was many things, but I think the theme that I'm realizing now, even as we're talking about it, is that it was watching other people doing and excelling at things they genuinely loved and doing it their way. So what I loved about this figure skater that I talk about in this essay, Jason Brown, is, and this is during a point, and still this is relevant because the Olympics just passed, when in figure skating, in men's figure skating in particular, the quad axle, just the quad in general, was the thing that you had to do if you wanted to be a winner, right?
Yeah.
If you wanted to medal, you have to do several quads. But I believe Jason Brown didn't have a quad in his program. I might be wrong about that. But he is a beautiful skater, just so artistically impeccable. And you can see the passion and the love he has for figure skating. And I think we see this with Alyssa Liu, right?
Yes.
Who just won gold. Both of them just have this like pure joy for the art and for the sport that they convey with their bodies and their faces when they're out there performing. And that was so inspiring to me because he doesn't win gold, but he kind of wins gold for himself in a way. He wins
Yeah.
in my eyes. He wins. And so it was seeing just this reminder that you can do what you love on your own terms. And there was another. It was at the Texas Book Festival when I attended a panel it was with Lindsay Lynch, who's actually my good friend. We did our MFAs together. She was there for her book, Do Tell, which is an amazing book.
Mhm.
And she was on a panel with the writer Alice Wynn, who wrote In Memoriam. Both of these are their debut novels. And I was listening to Alice when someone asked her about, how did you get into writing this book? Like, what was so interesting about it to you? And she was just talking about how fun and how obsessed she was with the research for this novel. And you could just see in the way she was talking about it, she lit up. She was so happy and so excited to talk about it. And I remember being in the audience in the depths of my despair at that time and just feeling again that glimmer of, wait, I remember what that feels like. I want to go home and I want to write right now.
Aw.
So I think it was multiple things, but the theme was seeing other people loving what they do, but doing it on their own terms and doing it in a way that felt healthy and sustainable for them.
Well, I think it's also like a reimagined representation of what winning and success looks like. Because I know for me, like some of the most triumphant feelings in the world has been alone in my bed with my laptop. And there's no witness to that. And that's like kind of amazing too, because you're giving yourself that validation.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff, the publicity, the literal hardcover on the pages, that's all just a domino effect and inevitability of that feeling of just sitting at your desk and knowing this very important part of yourself has figured something out.
Yes.
And I love when I can hear stories like yours where you've been able to experience both, right? Because I'm sure that time felt really, really dark and lonely. But in a way, the loneliness informed a lot of what the success of this novel. But I wanted to get into a really important part of that essay that I'm going to read here. You talk about this old teal green notebook, and Jenny, I'm not going to lie. I picture your next novel like an old looking teal, like the couch you're sitting on. That cover, I saw it so clearly. I'm not a witch, but maybe I am. And you say this line, it's an entire poem in itself, but it held garbage and it held greatness. You suggest, especially advice to writers, is revisit yourself too and often. Remember the yearning and the courage you had to write simply because you loved it and believed that it was enough, because actually it is. That felt like also like one of my favorite like lines out of like One Tree Hill. Like I love this. But I'm like gonna start like getting emotional. But I think I'm curious because as writers, we connect the dots so well. We know that we have to go back and revisit our old selves to inform a plot line or our fictional characters. And I'm kind of curious, how do you balance letting go to actually just shed these identities that don't serve you anymore? Or do you in your process revisit a lot?
You mean in my writing process, do I revisit these past selves?
Yeah, to maybe serve as new inspiration or like I think I play around with the idea of, do we ever truly let go? Because you have some people who are like, no, I've let go and I've moved on and I'm lighter and brighter because of it. But in our creative medium, I'm trying to understand from your process standpoint. I don't think it's a one size fits all. But I do know, especially just, different cultures and backgrounds, like, legends are sacred. And how does that carry us forward? But when do we make it our own?
I wonder, so in my actual writing process, like when I'm sitting it down to do the thing, I don't think I'm thinking so much about my past selves, but I think in my emotional process, I am always. I am always, even, I keep a writing journal whenever I'm working on the project, just to kind of, I have it divided into, here's my progress report for the day, but here's also my spirit report for the day. And it's funny because in those journals, I'm always writing, this was so hard. It's so hard. It feels so hard. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm capable. But at the same time, I think where that drawing on the past selves comes in is I also say, but I know that I can do this because I've done it before. I know because I've literally written a book before that I can do it again. So it's not so much, when I'm thinking about character and plot and conflict, it's very much a self-pep talk where I look at the past selves that sat in front of that computer, just kind of feeling like, is it possible? Am I capable? And seeing that it is, because I'm here and I'm going to do the next thing now. So yeah, I love that question actually.
I feel like that's very magical advice, because it's like, even when you're referring to your old notebook that you complete, it's very last page, it's like you may have not even envisioned those little notes as a formal writing process to pursue a novel, but you quite literally have written it down before. Therefore, you can craft it again. Yeah, that's amazing creative advice. I'm going to hold that for a while. And, part of the thing I've always loved about your writing is how you anchor us in place. With Superfan, we're grounded here in Austin, Texas, a place that you know so well. But I know before we even started recording, we were talking about the vibrancy of this community. I think to close this out and understand, especially where we started with Fandom, community seems to hold such an important feeling in your writing of making it come alive. But also, as you are here informing yourself as an artist, living here, breathing here, how has Austin and community shaped you as an artist?
Well, I would say, 10, 15 years ago for me, and maybe this is because I was just at a different place in my writing life. I was deeply enmeshed in the startup world. I was working for a tech startup in Austin, but I was really struggling to find artistic community. There were a few reading series at the time, but I also didn't know how to engage or interact with them. It just felt really difficult to kind of tap into that community. Now, I think there is such, as you use the word vibrancy, there are so many independent local bookstores here that have amazing events. There are also so many great readings and reading series now. There are so many writing clubs that I'm aware of. One of my friends, he works as a copywriter, but he's also kind of started going to these writing clubs and really rediscovering that creative side outside of his day job again. So And outside of just the writing community, I think I'm in my 30s now, and I think there's this surge of people in their late 20s and their 30s who have done the kind of day job track and are realizing that maybe it's also time to start bringing in those hobbies and those crafts and those arts back into their lives. And so I'm seeing a lot of communities sprout up around, let's just have a scrapbooking night, or let's have a clothing
Love
exchange,
that.
or let's just sit and talk about where we're at in our various projects. And that all feels so new, but it feels like it's been building for a while here in Austin. So I think I'm still being shaped by the creative community in Austin because it feels like every day someone's trying something different and more to bring more than just tech
Yeah.
and startups and big business here to kind of make sure that this idea of keep Austin weird that we had lives on through creative community.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to the process, and even what you said earlier was like being able to be inspired by other artists' excitement
Yeah.
and feel that energy is how we actually are able to go home and continue to write. And I think as more and more we lean into, the digital communities, we're disconnecting from, the loudness of going into a bookstore where there's a band playing and like physically touching a book.
Yeah.
And then, but we also want to, like, we met online.
I know.
So it's like both have such greatness about them. But then being able to translate it to like this moment right here is very, very special. Jenny, is there anything else that you want to share about your writing process, or like what's next and what's exciting you now?
I guess as far as what's next and what's exciting me now, I'm in this beautiful space right now of rest and relaxation after doing all the things for Superfan. And
my year of rest and relaxation.
Exactly.
Right there.
If only it could be a year, but it will not be. But I am really enjoying being in a restful space internally because I was just a ball of anxiety leading up to the publication of Superfan.
Why is that?
I just, it's interesting because I think the kind of sadness that I experienced after my first book came out kind of informed that anxiety for the second book. I think I was afraid of going through that again.
Right.
Of course, you're also afraid, are people going to like this book?
Right.
Am I capable of writing more than one book? All of those things. But now that the book is out, I just feel so relaxed and happy for it to be in the world. So I'm just kind of, what's exciting me now is that I get to just be a reader again. And, talking about events and community, going to see other writers, doing their readings and talking about their work and just being in the audience and reveling in watching someone talk about their work and experiencing other forms of art. That has been really exciting for me. I'm currently reading T. Kira Madden's new book, Whitney.
It just came in the mail before I came.
Yes.
Mind you, everyone, we were in T. Kira Madden's class.
Yes.
That's
together.
How we met. That's how we met. And oh my gosh, talk about a role model.
Oh my gosh.
Like, she has informed so much of like my different prompts that I'll practice. And I go back to her lessons all of the time.
Yes.
Especially like the beginning and endings one. Where if you guys are listening like this and you're a writer, you start out with writing 10 beginnings. So like maybe one or two sentences and then 10 endings. And they like the first time you do it, they match, but then you actually say, oh wait, no, take 1 and 10 of the first beginning and the last ending and try to write a story with it. Like, it's always very, very helpful for me. It also kind of drives me crazy. But I don't know why I always get stuck on that one, but that is probably the answer in itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love the one where she had us read Moonlight, the screenplay.
Oh, so good.
And then she had us write the autobiography of our lives in 3 acts.
Oh, yes. I
That
still have
one,
that exercise.
me too. That one
Yeah.
was so good. Yeah, she is incredible. I'm loving the book. And so, again, what's exciting me is just getting to read and getting to
Yes.
enjoy. And then I guess on the topic of, any last words on the writing process, I found that the best thing for myself was making writing romantic for myself again.
Mm.
There's all these there's all this advice against, like, you can't wait for inspiration to strike. You have to
Right.
sit down at the desk and just do it every day. You have to think of it as this thing that you do.
Yeah.
And yes, I think there is some discipline involved in any sort of art where you return to it regularly to see it to completion. But for me, when I really fell out of love with writing, one of the things that brought me back into it was remembering, but what did I love about it in the first place? And part of that was recreating that romanticization of
Yes.
writing and the writing process. And maybe that looks like making your desk really cute and making sure you're looking at something beautiful, making sure you're listening to good music, creating a comfortable space for yourself. I had to re-romanticize writing for myself because that was a part of how I fell in love with it in the first place. So I would say if you're struggling to get back into the thing that you once loved, or you're trying to re-find that spark, maybe go back to what made you fall in love with it in the first place and see if you can recreate it or evolve what that was for yourself and make it a comfortable form of coming home to it.
I love that. And it's even if you're not writing a romance novel, writing is one of the most romantic art forms there is.
Yeah.
Whether you're writing letters or like a recipe and like a grocery list, it's all about that nurture and care, ultimately for yourself.
Mhm.
And I think that is really important, because when you can find that grounding and joy again, that is what creates the love for yourself, but then others, your characters, the people around you. So I love that last advice. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Well, Jenny, it was wonderful to have you on the show. Everyone, I'm going to link all the books and everything to the podcast. Follow her on social media. And don't forget, sparkle on.
Make a sound when I'm standing and I'm shouting out.